All right, community dinner. Mary Jane's not familiar with the whole thing. So Mary Jane, we just ask for quietude while the recording, because people are going to watch this recording later. This is a community dinner talk that we do about 8 o'clock. So it's unfair to tell you that ahead of time, so I'll just tell you now that we're generally going to try to discourage side conversations until the talk's over. And there's a talk every week, and the continuing talk right now is nature in its order. And tonight we're heading into fall, so we have in nature we have like June 21st is like floating on fire energy. It's like it's like a lot of light, a lot of potential energy, and that energy gets used up in the summer. And then the halfway point between June 21st and September 21st is August 1st, and that's when the summer sort of peaks. The heat of the summer peaks, and then it goes into a contraction, which we've been in now for a month. And if you're aware, usually sometime in mid-August, there's that first fall evening where there's an obvious colder. Obviously, you can tell there's less light, the sun sets earlier, and that's already happened. It would have rained the last 2 days off and on if they hadn't geoengineered it out of existence, but that's just the way it is. So right now we're in this contraction of time, right? There's less light, there's less heat. And we call this, and the Chinese start to call this time of year late summer. And late summer has an affinity to the earth element. So why am I talking about this? Because I'm talking about this because we conceptualize a lot of things in life. And I spent 30 years studying this pattern of the seasons and the colors that go with the seasons and the organ to focus on with the season and the emotions of the season and all the things that come with studying natural law, the law of the universe. So that's why I'm up here talking, is because after 30 years, I've gotten a pretty good mastery of it, and I'm getting back so that we can live in alignment with the earth, not in alignment with male ego, pretending to be in alignment with the earth. And telling us a Burger King corporation called USA Incorporated, and telling us that, health is involved with nothing natural anymore. But so the founder of Standard Process is my hero of the century because of many of the things he said. Dr. Royal Lee, and one of them in 1953 in front of a college of physicians and chiropractors and acupuncturists, he said, we have a world of starving people. They're starving for nutrition, and we're treating the symptoms of starvation with poisons, meaning drugs. Yeah. 1953, he said that. Wow. Yeah. Oh, just 70 years have gone by. Nothing's changed. It's worse than ever. And why would this man say that? He wasn't in it for the money. Not at all. He never made a dime before he died of heart failure because they took his company out twice in the 50s and the 60s because he was always talking shit about the FDA and the USDA and the brainwashed three-letter agencies. He was a hero.
Who was this guy?
Royal Lee, the founder of Standard Process.
Oh, okay.
And so when somebody says we're trying to treat the reactions of starvation with poisons, I take notice because he is viewed by many as the top nutritionist of the 20th century. And nobody knows about him. He was meeting with Bernard Jensen and Weston Price and all those cats. They were all in their secret little meetings, and nobody knows about this stuff. So you can imagine the genius meeting with Royal Lee and Bernard Jensen and Weston Price and all these geniuses. Like, oh my God, I wish I could have been in that room. Yeah. So they were discussing nature and its order. See? Oh, and this is the other fun part that Mary Jane you see last week. Plants are straws in the earth. There's a squash straw right there. So plants sit in the earth, right? And they wick up moisture and nutrients upwards. And that's what the bees and the birds are going for, is the nectar from here is coming up from the earth. And the earth is literally pulling the moisture up into the plant. And we don't spend a lot of time talking about that process of, plants being straws in the earth. So, because plants are growing up towards the light, where are humans growing towards?
Down into the earth, to soil.
Yeah, that's one answer. I like that answer, actually.
Hopefully into out into the universe.
Out into the universe? Because plants are obvious, right? Wherever you see the sun, they're always growing pretty much that direction.
Towards the sun, yeah.
So what are humans growing towards?
The steering wheel, both ways.
Their screen.
Right. Yeah. Keyboards and the steering wheel.
Yeah.
Sorry.
The cell phone.
They're going towards their cell phone.
Yeah.
They're going towards the ground.
The light.
Going towards the light.
Towards the sun and the ground.
Yeah, they're anchoring into the ground and reaching to the light.
So-
Yeah, I will.
I don't have the answer. I'm having fun listening to you guys. I don't know.
Man,
There is no right answer.
For a little bit.
Yeah, well, so we're growing. Is there really growth, or is there's seemingly growth? I mean, that's the question that Adeshanti poses is, you go into a room and you smell rose essential oil everywhere. And you go, there seems to be roses here, but there are no roses to be seen anywhere. But you can still smell the roses because the essential oil is present, right? And a lot of how we appear in matter is that way. It seems to be this way. And that's the most honest statement we can say, is it seems to be this way. And then we're kind of in check. I read lots of doctors, lots of colleagues, and the ones that say, this is the way it is, that's like, you run from them, run.
The science is settled.
The science is settled, right. Run, run quickly.
Is that an oxymoron or what is?
Oh my God.
Science.
The
Oh.
religion of science.
So we live in a world now, I mean, to respond to that, we live in a world now where science is God now.
right.
Literally. Yeah.
Religion was a whole thing about controlling the divine, because you had to go to a priest to really know God, right? You had to have an intermediary to know God.
It's a different kind of belief system.
Exactly. So science has become a belief system.
Mhm.
And we've tossed out what the other half of life is, which is the process. Science is a series of photographs of life processes. And so we've collected this mountain of photographs of life, but we don't understand the other half, which is how they all fit together in the process of life. And that's what I'm teaching, is if you don't follow the seasons and how, that your liver has an emotion associated with it called anger, and your heart has an emotion associated with it called joy and depression, and your lungs have an emotion, it's called grief. Your kidneys have an emotion called fear. Your digestive system has an emotion called anxiety and brooding. And that's a reflection of something. So I gave a talk 20 years ago about this, nutrition and emotional health. It was a sold out class. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but I got there in front of 200 people in San Francisco and just did my best. But it was the 5-element model in Chinese medicine. And so they're pointing at phenomena. Like my teacher said, Adeshanti is like, don't worship the teacher, go investigate what they're pointing towards in natural phenomena, right? So there's all this natural phenomena that we label, we label the divine, Buddha, Krishna, Muhammad, but it's all the same force. I mean, I figured that out 30 years ago. It's like, they're just pointing to the same phenomena, it's a different label. So you got Chinese medicine with their 5-element system and Ayurveda with their 3-element system, which is actually a translation of a 5-element system, earth, air, water, and fire, and ether or space. But it's different than the Chinese 5-element model. And then there's 4-element models called the medicine wheel. And there's 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 element models. And then there's the Enneagram, and that's what a 9-element system typing. And there's astrology with 12 elements, or 12 signs.
Astrology with 13.
Vedic with 13. Numerology, we'll just call it etc-ology, right? Etc-ology. And all they are conceptual models pointing at natural processes of the universe. So to get down to one little subtlety of it, remember we've been talking about the chosen ones in the periodic table, C, H, O, S, and N. So all of those elements are what makes up most of life, the form of life. Carbon, hydrogen, what? No, that's backlit. That's not good. That's why I have the light on over there. The screen actually looks fine. So when we start looking at the change of the seasons, one of the things I start to notice as a sort of a pure ketogenic protein type metabolically is if I have too much potassium rich foods, I get allergy symptoms this time of year, and in the spring also. And so for some people, potassium, which is an alkaline element, is metabolized into an acid in my type. So actually an alkaline element can become acidic. And I believe that's what happens to me. because I do this, those green juices that I do. And if I do them too much too long, like yesterday, I had the sour stomach. I had to lay down for an hour and a half just to pull out myself out of the potassium hangover I was in. And then I went right into a salty soup and I felt fantastic. So those are, you see how I have written here, Na and K, they're antagonists, sort of partners. Zinc and copper are antagonists and partners. Calcium and magnesium, a little bit of phosphorus, are kind of partnered up. And so we have to know how to play with those relationships. We're not taught that. Anybody heard of this? How to play with your sodium potassium ratio, your calcium magnesium ratio, your zinc copper ratio. Anybody ever?
Calcium, magnesium.
Nobody talks about it, right?
Not much.
Right, because we're looking at process, and the chosen ones, as David Stewart calls it in his book, The Chemistry of Essential Oils, subtitle, God's Love Manifest in Molecules. So he's bridging the woo-woo to the hard sciences. I love this man. David Stewart, we love you. Because in his Chemistry of Essential Oils book, he talks about this, and that's where I got the process thing. There's quotes in his book that Lavoisier's law of chemistry is incorrect. Things transmute. We don't have a set of things that don't. Silica turns into calcium in cows and chickens. Cows and chickens are not eating calcium-rich foods. They're eating silica-rich foods.
Really?
So when they're little, humans have a raw food stomach too. It's called the fundus. And so we actually have two stomachs, but we're not taught that. We have a raw food stomach, and then we have an acid stomach. So, and the cows and the chickens, the same thing. They got like 4 stomachs in the cow.
Yeah.
Chicken, how many stomachs does the chicken have?
I'm
Where's the
so
chicken?
sorry.
That'd be a good inquiry.
3, 4.
Go to Google.
I'll look at
You look at it. So there's a book written by a French scientist years ago called Biological Transmutations. And that's where he started uncovering all this stuff. Like they measured the amount of calcium going into a chicken and the calcium coming out in the eggs, and it doesn't equate the same. They would give sodium pills to people in the desert, and they weren't taking any, they'd pee a lot of potassium out. That's why they give them salt pills in the desert, because the body transmutes sodium to potassium.
This is very exciting.
So the chemistry as we were taught is bullshit. And I gotta give you guys that link to that Greek
Well, then we can make
study.
gold. I'm thinking I didn't take it.
So the craziest one though, like nature's law, they had these stoves in France that were boiling down steel, metals, molten lava. And the iron on these stoves would get so hot, it would heat the nitrogen into the air and turn it into carbon monoxide.
Ooh.
And all of these steel workers were dying
Oh, God.
Whoa.
in 1800s in France or 1900s in France. And this guy figured it out. He said, oh, it's just transmuting. And he was labeled a quack. He was practically murdered, ostracized. Sound familiar? And finally, the science caught up with where he was. And they're like, oh my God, he's right. The nitrogen in the air got to 500, 600 degrees Fahrenheit and transmuted into oxygen. Because nitrogen and oxygen on the periodic table are not that far apart. And I was going, wow, we've been really brainwashed, So transmutation is part of what we're about. It's how our body actually recycles elements. Like iron isn't as fixed as we think. None of these are. And this book proved it. Biological transmutations. It's back in my room somewhere. So right now we're transmuting our blood. So when the weather is hot, should you have thicker or thinner fluids in your body? When it's hot? Really?
You want thicker?
Whoa.
Wait,
Yeah.
you said what is, we have thicker and thinner fluid in our body? That was your question?
So when you have a lot of heat, if you have
Your
thin
blood
fluids,
needs thinner to be cooler when it's hot.
you want it thicker.
What?
But that would make more friction.
Look at the opposite. Look at the opposite.
Want to keep it in.
Look at the opposite. When it's cold out, you don't want thick.
No, you want thin, yeah.
That's what the
Why?
fish oils do. They thin your blood. That's what omega-3s are. The fish aren't making fish oils for us. The fish are making fish oils so they can swim in the freezing cold ocean to thin their blood enough they can swim in the cold. So the opposite is true in the heat. You want it thick because it becomes thinner by the heat. That's with your oil, use different grades of oil and different temperatures, right? 20W50, 10W40, 10W30. Those are weights.
Yeah,
So you want a thicker oil in the heat and a thinner oil in the cold,
right.
because thick becomes thinner. So
Right.
in my research recently, I've been covering across how do you thicken or thin the blood. I just found it out on the most.
Saturation.
Pardon?
It's based on saturation. That's what makes an oil thicker or thinner. Isn't it?
There's a lot of different elements to make it thicker or thinner, so we won't go into that, but it's generally the amount of saturated fat. Saturated fats versus unsaturated fats.
Right.
So the more saturated, the more
Right.
sticky it is. But there's other, there's other elements we'll go into in a minute. There was long chain fats and short chain fats.
Right.
Like butter is a tiny little short chain fat, and fish oils are like 30 units
Right.
long.
The longer it is, then the thinner it's going to be because it's hard to line up and get solid.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. So wow, excellent.
Smart.
I like chemistry.
So these fish, like we get this human-centric attitude, like, oh, the fish are making fish oils for us humans, and the plants are making caffeine for us humans. But we have to go to their view of the universe, which is why was a plant making caffeine? I told you this. It's a poison. It's an insecticide. So they can live, and then we have a whole world of people brainwashed that insecticide poison is good for them. It makes them more productive. I'm in it. I'm drinking it right now. Yerba mate.
Are you though?
I'll be the first one, that's why I'm up here, is because I can call myself out on my own bullshit all the time. Because I don't believe my own stories anymore, mostly. And so I can just I'm free. There's the Craig bullshit again. Oh, there's that rerun story. Boy, Craig's pretty funny today. I meditated today, so I got to sit through the shit show. Like, oh man, I've got a funny mind. So, so back over here again. So right now we're shifting, like when I was in macrobiotics 26 years ago, they were talking about this, and I was where you guys are. I'm like, more potassium in the summer and sodium in the winter, and how does this relate to the energies? I'm so lost. And chosen ones and liver in the spring, and what do you say about the fall of grief and lungs? And how's that? What the colons mix in with this? And what the fuck? And the color of the colon's different than the color of the liver, and the emotions too. Like, what the fuck? The stuff I was taught in school is like bullshit. So I have a bachelor's degree in nutrition. And I sat through these classes and I just wanted to kill these teachers. It's so ignorant. And these little 4 years of a bachelor's degree in nutrition, and I had maybe 1 year of it was useful. God, it was pathetic. Just pathetic. We at our senior year, there were 3 of us opening the restaurant, the Natural Flavors, the very same time that Guayaquil opened up in San Luis Obispo in '96. We were teaching the teacher. We were teaching the teachers in the advanced nutrition courses.
Wow.
We had a pathetic, and the dean of the School of Nutrition, I poked on him a few times. He had a belly out to here, smoked cigarettes,
Oh my God.
and a totally negative attitude.
Oh,
I could not sit in this guy's office. And here I am, a 30-year-old man looking at this guy going, and you want us to emulate you?
Yeah, right.
He was 30?
I was 30.
Oh, okay.
He was probably in his 50s, and he was like my age. And I'm looking at this guy going, well, I'm gonna do the opposite of this guy.
Yeah, right.
He's angry and smoked and fat.
Ouch.
So what does that really tell you about the guy? He's traumatized, he's overeating to probably hide something.
He's a hypocrite.
He's smoking to cover up something else. But underneath the hypocrisy,
Yeah,
there's somebody in a lot of
some
pain.
more than others.
A lot of pain. A lot of pain.
No offense.
Right away.
Always what?
Okay, I am a hypocrite. I'll tell you that.
Who in this group is not? I mean,
But I'm
Just
trying to
said. We're all.
yeah, we can laugh at ourselves,
My doctors take the hypocritic oath, right?
Oh,
You got more
Right.
nutrition education than doctors do. They only get a few hours, right?
well,
Mostly, most physicians. And
Oh, way.
so
I know that's a.
Mary Jane just said, you have more. So what my point that I make to almost to everybody is, you go into medicine with your scope of practice and what you're sort of qualified to do, right? So I have doctors. I have one right now with a client. The doctor's point of contention with my plan, he's completely against it. And then my point to the client is, well, what's your doctor's scope of practice in nutrition? And I say, I have 30,000 hours, 30 years of experience. What's your doctor got?
One.
He will defer to me. Your doctor will defer to me. I don't go prescribing drugs. That's his realm. So he shouldn't be telling any patient what nutrition is, because I'll go in there and I'll just go, you know, how much credibility you got, doc? You got a weekend workshop with 10 hours? Big freaking deal. It's got your MD title, your little brainwashed science title. I'm the priest of science, called MD.
Whoa.
You know, who got your MD title?
You're
And then
someone.
these older people, especially the older people, they didn't lose their trust yet. And I don't know how many times I hear the older person say, but my doctor said,
Dr. God.
and I'm going, but why are you listening to these people that are paid off by money interests? You know, most doctors don't sign up to be doctors because they're good people. You know that, don't you? They sign up because it's a fucking ego. You know how many, the breakup of a relationship with MDs when they become MDs is higher than any other profession. The MD ditches the partner who sacrifices to get them through medical school and then ditches them when they're finally done. There's a very high rate of that.
It's like Alec Baldwin and what was that, Malice, about him being God. That's the God complex. That's what I get from that.
Right. So what we're looking at is the whole thing is being peeled open right now. That's what apocalypse means, you know, the exposing. And it's all being, you know, like the scab being exposed, like, oh God. Like, how many of you knew that an open spot on the earth, how does the earth, you can't answer because you heard it. An open spot on the earth with no plants, how does the earth view that?
It's a black hole of possibilities.
It's a wound. And that's why the weeds grow so fast to heal it up. That's exactly what happens when we get a wound. The weeds close in just to seal it up.
Kiss the ground. That kind of goes into the whole. Yeah, the soil turns to dirt.
That's why you see so much dead soils, because the earth wants to be wet and have plants growing over it so it can respirate. One really cool story just popped in from The Lost Language of Plants. Stephen Herod Buhner. They wrote this book in the 90s. Who writes a book of The Lost Language of Plants?
The secret life.
And
Secret Life of Plants.
Secret Life of Plants, Peter Tompkins. So in the Southwest, there was this ground squirrel gopher eradication policy back in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s. And so they were trying to, there's holes everywhere, you know, like you go up in the UCS, you see the ground squirrels everywhere and there's holes everywhere. You know about it, not where you are. They're terrible. They're, you know, they're little rats that are cute, you know. And so they're very cute, you know, and so they were going to eradicate them. And these natives came out and said, why are you doing that? It's going to stop all the rain in the Southwest. And the American scientists are scratching and go, what? What? I don't know. So that, you know, they killed all the ground squirrels and the gophers in this one part of the Southwest. And sure enough, the rainfall levels dropped 50%.
Wow.
And then they finally humbled themselves before the natives and asked why, because they just went ahead and did it. Because the white man knows everything, therefore he can't be taught anything, because he already knows everything. So they said, well, you know, why are those animals burrowing in the ground from the Earth's perspective?
The roots.
Yeah.
To do what?
The benefit to the earth.
To fertilize the soil with their poop and urine.
Think bigger, on a bigger scale. I mentioned the word earlier, it begins with an R.
Respiration. Aerating.
The gophers are Earth's way of getting holes deeper in the earth so the earth can respirate and get moisture from the aquifers up into the atmosphere. And by closing those holes off, they cut off the natural moisture coming up from you hear that Benton's been talking about the primary water, you know, the primary water into the earth. That's how a lot of that is what's coming up into the atmosphere. And they plugged up all the holes, and the natives were like, they already knew this shit, but how did they know it? They didn't have, you know, they don't have science. They had something better than science. It's called presence with spirit. And that's what I learned sort of the hard way, but the solution to any problem lies within the problem itself. You just sit with it. Go sit in the woods, go sit in the forest, go sit in the ocean, and you'll get your answers. But we're taught to go, look outside, look out there. Don't look in here, that's bad. I got a little excited there, didn't I?
That was quite a demonstration.
That was a
Yeah.
very good
It's like
example.
a mind orgasm. there.
Don't spill your seed, Craig.
Blast off over here.
Yeah, that was why I.
Yeah, no more Guayaquil, more of them hops. Yeah, I'll offset with the hops over here.
Yeah, cut off, you are cut off in here.
So we'll go back to the sodium potassium because I want to kind of end on this.
Thank you.
So why are we going to more sodium rich in the fall? Anybody want to take a shot at it? Why more sodium rich versus potassium as we head into the winter?
Working, have build up, retain water. Wait, I don't know. Back to you.
Ask the question again.
Why do we go to more sodium rich foods in general than potassium rich as we head into winter?
Build up fat and water.
So we have more
form,
salt in
something
our
like
blood,
that.
so our blood doesn't freeze in the cold.
Yeah, those are sure, they're both relevant.
Yeah.
So which one's more warming, sodium or potassium? Relatively so. Sodium is more warming than potassium. Potassium is viewed as yin. In other words, it's called the radioactive element in Bernard Jensen's world. Potassium is called the radioactive element. So it's going up and out everywhere. And sodium is more of this, especially in large amounts. What happens to meat when you highly salt it? It contracts, right? So sodium in excess causes contraction and potassium in excess causes extreme expansion. And you don't want to be all expanded and out there in the wintertime because you'll freeze to death.
Yeah.
Like the tree is gathering their energy now and it's going into the roots, and then the leaves are falling and dying. And that's the symptom of the process of the life force going down into the roots. Well, the leaves are so pretty turning color. The more important question is, wow, the plant's really taking this energy going deep down inside now. And around here, that doesn't usually happen until around Thanksgiving with the first big storm and the wind. I watch the ginkgo trees, and when they turn, that's officially winter here. There's the first big storm, it's cold and it's windy, and the ginkgo leaves are literally off the trees in 2 days. And that's how I know. It's like, oh, the ginkgos drop their leaves now. But how cold do we get here? I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Oh, it's 40 degrees. Ooh. You know, we're so wimpy out here.
Give it time, it'll get colder. Have a baby, Craig.
So sodium being a more warming element is always associated with the acid forming foods. Grains, beans, nuts, seeds, meat, dairy. What else did I leave out? All your caloric foods are generally higher in sodium. And then your non-caloric foods, your watery fruits and vegetables are higher in potassium.
Except celery, high in sodium.
It's still higher potassium relative to the meat family. Within the vegetable family, it's more yang and more sodium, but only within the vegetable family. Celery is still on the high potassium side compared to other foods. It's just high in both sodium and potassium. But yes, you're correct. Bernard Jensen used to talk about the highest sodium rich foods, and he would always point to celery. And I've been touting celery as a superfood for 30 years. And finally, people are catching up. You know, like, hey, it's nice to know that, you know, that people can see that celery is great food.
Would you prefer it raw or cooked?
Raw, for sure.
I mean, once you cook foods rich in minerals, the cooking process precipitates the mineral out from the protein complex it's bound to. And that precipitation makes it somewhat unavailable. That's what you call pasteurization of milk. The protein calcium complex splits off and is damaged. You don't get the protein or the calcium. And you get mucus and rot.
No bueno.
Not good.
Yeah, no bueno.
Yeah. So that's why you want to be careful with cooking stuff. But bone broth, for example, you know, cooking in a watery medium doesn't damage as much. And so that's why bone broth is so helpful, proven to be so, right, over thousands of years. And that's where some of the modern stuff is a little bit more dicey, you know, like I'd rather take what nature has to give in terms of like silica, for example. You go, oh, these silicas, and where are they made? Oh, I don't know, some laboratory. Like that means there's an ego involved. Fuck that. I want the resources of the entire universe going into my body, which is nature. I don't want some guy's ego. Oh, the lactobacillus and the bifido and this factor here and this, and my mind thought that's the best, and my mind's better than God.
Where do you get?
Run. Iodine's no different. Lugal solution was 2/3 potassium iodide, 1/3 elemental iodine. That was developed by Dr. Lugal in 1841 and was the choice for all thyroid conditions, hypo or hyper, until the brainwash thyroid medicine came around in the 1970s and did a brainwash study called the Wolff-Chaikoff study, UC Berkeley. And they used like 10 rats and they demonized iodine. And then they started putting bromine in bread and chlorine in the water. And meanwhile, the other halogen elements displaced iodine out of our body. And guess what iodine's involved with? Here's a mystery of the universe.
Thyroid.
But iodine, good iodine status is associated with high IQ. Low iodine status, low IQ. That's been proven many times over.
Also heard that.
So what do you think they're dumbing us down? They're putting fluoride and chlorine in the water to displace iodine to make us more stupid.
Oh, wow.
But we're not falling for it.
But and sodium fluoride is well known in psychology to make you susceptible to suggestion.
Really?
Sodium.
Yeah, NaFl.
Is that the way that occurs naturally?
They were doing that in the concentration camps. They were
Oh, it
putting-
was the sodium chloride in concentration.
Yeah, they were putting sodium fluoride in the
Yes,
concentration
one of the
camp
things I
water.
noticed about Emma, since she's
Pacified
been on the
and-
antipsychotic drugs, is
Yeah.
she's so
Yeah. exactly.
easy.
Except when that golden.
She won't stand up to you. Like, it's great. She's just so nice to be around, but she's very suggestible. So like,
That's
I'm
part
really
of it.
careful what I say to her.
That's part of it.
I'm trying to use it wisely, but like,
But if you
yeah.
think about it, how many generations of fluoridated water are we in now? 3, 4?
Or 1940, when did they start?
When did they start fluoridating water? In the 40s, 30s?
I don't know when it started.
To me, I think it's 4 or 5 generations of humans have been fluoridated now.
Yeah, the 40s, late 40s when they started fluoridating.
Yeah.
Okay.
The first pilot project
Thanks,
was,
Operation Paperclip.
was 48
Mhm,
and it was in on the East Coast.
So Drew said 1948 East Coast. It was so, and that meeting that established that was fluoride is a waste product of aluminum mining, I believe.
And fertilizer.
Fertilizer.
And fertilizer.
From the DuPont.
Both, yeah.
From DuPont. And so some asshole up there says, hey, I'll sell you my waste and we'll trick the humans into thinking it's good for them in this form. And we'll put it in the water. And then, hey, and then you can buy my waste, which is coal mining waste. It's put into B vitamins and sprayed into the geoengineering. And there's an ad by this one nanized company. I saw it on the web a couple of years ago. They were bragging about how they make the best aluminum nanized oxides out of coal mining waste on the web, bragging about it.
I didn't think so.
Oh yeah. It's Batman, Riddler, Batman, Joker stuff. The Riddler always had to tell Batman the crime in a riddle, or the Joker with a joke. And go to the World Economic Forum website, and you'll see all the variants of COVID laid out in the future for you. They're like, that's sort of cosmic law. You got to tell people what you're doing and let them choose.
Right.
And then so we have this world of suggestible people put in front of the idiot box with suggestions coming out. Subliminally, like you about the old popcorn one in the movie.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that really blew my mind.
What? Which one? What?
The movies, and they'll put a little thing of popcorn, the one slide amongst,
One
and it-
frame in the
Oh,
film.
one frame of popcorn,
Get it now.
Get it.
and it makes you like, popcorn, I want
But
popcorn.
that's illegal now. They can't do that.
right.
That's illegal.
Who's watching?
Who's watching?
Yeah, also
So to
like,
speak.
Literally.
They put in the test they did, they put one frame that said drink Coca-Cola in a film, movie film. And after the film was shown that the Coca-Cola sales at the refreshment stand went up 80%.
80.
80%.
Suggestibility again, right?
Oh, yeah.
Subliminal.
Most people will walk around in hypnosis, basically.
Yeah.
That's right.
So here's my point. This goes right back to why I'm up here. What is the first foundation of health in my 4 foundation system? And so that involves clarity, does it not?
Absolutely.
And if you're in hypnosis, are you clear? Oh, no.
No.
Oh, no. And that's what I run into a lot. And that's where I'm not kind sometimes, Cindy, is if they're in a state of hypnosis. Adyashanti had this whole thing at a whole sat song. It was talking about how do you get someone out of a dream that's in a dream? And it was like this really rich discussion for a couple hours of like, Well, you go in and you slam them on the head and wake up. It's like, but what if they're in the dream and they're running from a saber-toothed tiger and suddenly you appear? They're not going to listen to you
That's right.
because they're running from the saber-toothed tiger. So how do you wake them up out of that? Anybody got me? How do you wake somebody out of that?
Tell them to look at their hands.
Okay, that's one.
And
Yeah.
in your dreams, if you need to wake up, look at your hands and you'll remember you're in a dream and you can calm down. One
But
of the-
let's translate that to waking life, dreaming and waking life.
Yeah.
Well, the fact that our hands are so powerful would be one idea, but
You could say, well, look at your hands and you might come down into your body a bit, but that's where Cindy, that's where it's you've got to be more spontaneous. Like some people are they're going to need to be coddled and comforted out of their hypnosis, and others are going to require a sword. And some are going to die
yeah.
in the waking up process. And that's one of the reasons I loved Adyashanti, because that's one of the things he used to say is there's no guarantee you're going to survive your awakening process.
That is one of the main things I remember.
Yeah.
No, that's right. That's right. We're
There
Adya
with
people.
dead bodies,
Adya
the
people.
passion, yeah.
You're going to step over the dead bodies of those that have taken a position on their way to enlightenment.
Yeah.
And taking a position means stuck in an identity.
Yeah.
I'm identified here. I'm a cancer victim and I'm not going any further.
And once you label it, you can't get out of that. You start to be stuck in the label.
I got so many right now in it. I mean, I was down at a store today. I won't mention it because it might be by inference know this lady, but we were talking about psychics and how what impressed me about her was this guy walked in claiming to be a psychic, and then she lied and said she was the manager. And I was the next person in line listening to the whole thing. And she guy said, I'm a psychic and I want to work with you guys. And I want to have this little booth over here in the corner. And she's rolling her eyes and she looked at me kind of, and she's like, oh, I like this lady, she's kind of being, I knew she wasn't the manager. And so he talked his way and she goes, oh, here, get out of here. And so then I go, you're not the manager, are you? And she goes, no, I was just testing him. And I was like, oh, yes.
See if he was psychic.
And then she said, and then today I talked to her again. She said another person claiming to be a psychic came in and she's 5 months pregnant. And they didn't spot that. She goes, is there anything unusual about me? You could tell me. And the psychic couldn't spot it. And so she was, I just love that, just checking, testing them, right? Okay, you say you're psychic, huh?
See, that's awareness in the moment, is to have the awareness to test.
Right.
Yeah.
And in Taoism, there's a saying about this. Those who know don't talk.
Mhm.
Those who talk don't know.
Yes.
I was just listening to Lama Yeshi last night on the bed, and he was talking about this because it was like a question and answer, and someone asked, like, well, basically it was like, can you do remote viewing? And he goes, no, that was the answer. And then later on in his talk, he says, and in our tradition, if you can do these things, you're not supposed to talk about it. He answered her question later by not answering it.
Oh my God.
It was great.
I've seen a lot of teachers, and Adya too, be like, hey, Adya, do you have any relationship advice for me? You've heard this. And he'll always start off with, no, I don't know anything. And then he'll have a 20-minute answer, after he says no, the disclaimer, right? Oh, but didn't you just say 20 minutes ago you didn't have anything? Look at that channel you just had there. Oh my God.
Yeah, I don't know, something about that's funny. You say no, and then you prove that you do. A little on edge.
But see,
Purpose
that's
is
the,
there.
that's the proof of it, is in the moment when he's doing that channeling, right? You know that that's more the truth than anything else. If he's claiming that he knows, right? It has nothing to do with the process of being aware and conscious in the moment. And that's the key. You can't get the truth out of somebody who's like claiming, oh, I know the truth. It comes from in the moment, in the process of knowing. And that's what that book says. That's how you know it's real.
You guys know that the heart math machine, the little thing you plug into your ear. So I've been playing with that, and that's part of this nature and its order thing. I've always been trying to find what's the state of being I can access within myself that this little device is pointing towards. And once I get that state down, I don't need the device anymore.
That's right.
So I've been cross-correlating what it feels like when I'm in harmony with that machine, when it's on the green light, not the blue or the red. And then I went out, got completely stoned out of my mind yesterday. I went on this bike ride and just started interacting with people. And there's a certain sense of being behind my body, in my heart chakra, just behind there, where I take my awareness and I just take a breath there and I look at someone from that place and then I know I'm in harmony. How do I know that? Because I would walk down the mall and go in and out of this harmony and people couldn't stop looking at me. So they're looking my way and they weren't even looking at me. They must have been sensing my energy field. It's like, well, this guy's in harmony. I want a piece of that ass. Because that's what Krishna Das said when Ram Das came back from India. Krishna Das wrote a book called Chance of a Lifetime. C-A-N-T-S, Chance of a Lifetime. And what a great book, because he describes Ram Dass when he comes back. I think it was the same guru the Beatles had.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Ram Maharshi, whatever. And so he came back and Krishna Das is like, he'd known him before he went over to India. And he's like, this guy's, he's different. He's happy. He's at peace. I can see there's something changed about him. And he said, I want a piece of that ass. You know, I want to learn, I want to live that way, you know? And that's what the truth is, self-evident to each of us. So there's, Adyashanti talks about this. You know, we all feel when someone's speaking the truth. We don't, it's our meter, our bullshit meter. So the claimer, like when I'm watching surfing and the guy claims at the end of the wave in a contest, unless it's well done, classy, like, you know, Andy Irons used to do some pretty cool claims, and but he could because he was
What does that
champion.
mean? What does that mean, claims?
Like you really do good on a wave, or like a gymnast does really good on the gymnast, and they go, yeah, look at the judges, and yeah, I'm the best.
Like football players.
Yeah, the dance in the end zone or whatnot. Or the basketball player do a little twirl, the dance into the hoop, you know. And I mean,
We don't mind when it's actually dance like. If it's
Right. You know what's reassuring me right now is that they're in an ecstasy because they were in the zone.
Yeah.
That they're amazed at what they just did, and it's just like, wow.
Well, there's a difference though between celebrating yourself and like doing it in a form of like, I'm better than you.
Yes,
you know?
exactly.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's
that's
ego.
a whole other thing.
Yeah.
That's a different
That's ego.
That's
right?
it.
And
So
that
the
has
expression
nothing
is
to do-
different.
Yeah.
like, you know, me and Lars go surf and you see guys in the water, and when there's a natural joy, it's like we all celebrate together. When the guys all egoed out about it, it's like, dude, get away.
That's
'Cause we can
right.
all feel it, you know. Yeah,
Yeah.
But the fact that we're saying that one of those is better than the other, we're doing that. So
we're still classifying.
Very good gold star for you, Cindy.
So the word is, I'm gonna borrow, since Mary Jane's here, the word is,
judging those judges. Damn it.
Adyashanti has a word for this. You're contaminated. That's an Adya.
Yeah.
You're contaminated. And we see the contamination, don't we?
Yeah.
It's all being revealed, the contamination all around us. The posers or the sincere from the real. And that's what I'm doing. You know, I'm looking for sincere people. You know.
Contaminate is such a great word because so often it's because we're doing what we were bathed in, like whatever our parents did, and we're contaminated by their actions as opposed to aware of how it comes across. And it's wonderful when somebody can say, ew, that doesn't look like you. I've really been amazed several times to realize how much I was like my parents when I didn't expect it.
Yeah.
I could see things. Oh my God, finally, my eyes are open. Thank God, you know, that's best when friends can point that out.
And doesn't it feel terrible when somebody brings it up that you're just like your parent?
Can be. Again, I've had it done in enough loving ways that it's been fine, but yeah.
I had to do it to an old friend the other day. I go, you're just like your mother. And she just went,
it
oh
hurts.
my God.
Yeah.
But she got it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's scary.
I asked for permission too. I said, hey, can I offer you a reflection? Because, you know, that's not the kind of thing you want to just blurt out. You know, it's like, hey, can I have permission to tell you something that might, you know. Let's see, almost 9. So I wanted to try to get to this. I was trying to lead us over to this elemental thing where you're going into more sodium, and then we're also going more into protein, fat rich foods. Generally, carbohydrate, where's my pen? Carbohydrates are, in their pure form, are this.
CO2.
Carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. It's a hydrated carbon. The chemical formula Carl said last week for a pure carbohydrate is C6H12O6. And then fat is the same 3 elements, CH and O, in the pure state. Isn't that interesting? It's just different Lego building blocks arranged
The
differently.
numbers are different. It's not C6, H12.
Well, the formula is different, yeah. It's like C8, you know, depending on the fat molecule you're looking at too. Butter fat's gonna have a different CHNO than a fish fat.
The same basic elements in different ratios.
So these two on the end here, the S and the N, what's that make up? No, that's sulfur and nitrogen. So we've covered protein and fat. I mean,
Carbs.
I'm just gonna be covered carbs and fat, sorry.
Protein.
So proteins left. That's right, that was a little blip there.
Brilliant, Cindy.
So
Yeah,
nitrogen
it
is composed of all proteins, and some proteins have sulfur in them. There are 3 sulfur containing amino acids, or 4, 3 or 4, and they're valuable in their own right. But it's nitrogen that's the building element. And all of these elements here are acid forming. Hint, hint. So then we have the other alkaline elements, right? So we have the main alkaline elements to offset the acid forming foods we're eating. Doesn't matter whether you're eating meat or rice or nuts, they're all acid forming. And you need the trace elements, particularly your 4 macro or main alkaline elements are those 4: calcium, magnesium, sodium, and potassium. That's why you see them on the lab work, almost always except magnesium. And Monica has a good grace of being in my Wednesday and Dean in my Wednesday group, and we go deeper in, we just went through this. And it's really important to understand these ratios. So in the wintertime, you also go more calcium and less magnesium in the winter, because calcium is more activating and warming than magnesium. Calcium is this action, magnesium is this action. Versus.
So that's why people eat a lot of meat that don't eat very many vegetables, which is sick.
That's right, because they're very acidic, but there's another piece to this that I've been looking at. And so when you eat too much cooked meat, it turns into an alkaline poison called guanidine. I spent part of this week researching guanidine because Royal Lee, who was the most genius nutritionist of the 20th century, would always be talking about guanidine poisons. And so I did some research this last week into mainstream science about it. And they're giving people guanidine injections and supplements these days. And it's a toxic fucking poison.
Oh, God.
It's part of this brainwash reversal inversion thing. So guanidine is a toxic byproduct of your colon bacteria when there's rotting, putrefying meat in there.
Yum.
It's one of like 25 other tissue poisons. There's a really nice one too called putrescine.
Oh, no.
My colon's full of putrescine today. Yum. Hey, give me a dose of putrescine, would you?
It's like luciferases.
No doubt.
Yeah, give me a dose of
It is the best
putrescine.
Really?
Yeah,
The
it's
best thing,
the-
Yeah,
luciferase?
luciferase.
And the measurements. 6 and 6.
And then there's a Lucifer telescope that the Vatican owns in the South Pole.
You can't make this shit up.
What?
Yeah.
No, you can't make this shit
Lucifer
up.
telescope that the Vatican owns in the South Pole.
Lucifer.
Look it up. It's right there.
Completely amazing.
There's so many of these little secrets, right? So your colon bacteria make up to 25 well-known poisons when stuff sits in there too long. And guess what? This is all from Royal Lee. I went through some old Royal Lee writings and compared it to modern science. And the other thing was that when your colon is slower, there's always a higher correlation to arthritis. Now, isn't that interesting?
See that one slow?
Those with slower bowels have a higher correlation with arthritis than those faster bowels. And this was proven back from the 30s to the 50s. And as I tell people, the best health geniuses and information ended about 1950 to 60. And everything since then has been plagiarized. We haven't learned much since 50 or 60, actually. Most of the stuff we know now was thought up before 50. I know because I've researched enough to see, oh my God, we're like a 70, 80, 90 years behind because of luciferase.
Is Weston Price one of those people pre?
Yeah, Price was like 20s and 30s, and Royal Lee was 20s and 30s, and Jensen was a little bit later. And there was a whole set of men. There was one guy that did a cat study, Pottinger's cats, and he studied cats eating raw meat and dairy versus cooked. And the cats fed cooked meat and dairy died within 1 to 2 generations. And the raw meat animals lived happy and healthy.
Wait, I never forgot.
So there's Edward Howell. There's Edward Howell who did the enzyme, he did the enzyme work, which was the predecessor to all the autoimmune stuff now. He was studying the digestive reaction of the white blood cell count after eating. And so the way out is the way out of all this is to eat your proteins raw, ideally. Like Cindy is talking about here, because this, even though meat's acidic, it turns into an alkaline poison by your gut bacteria eating the meat and then pooping out an alkaline poison called guanidine. And it causes incredibly intense pain, because alkaline pain is very intense. And it comes on when you're resting more than when you're active. So what's the remedy then? There's 2 remedies for guanidine. Veggies is correct, but what part of the veggie specifically? What chemical part of the veggie? Not the sulfur part. Chlorophyll. The standard process, chlorophyll pearls, has gotten people out of this guanidine pain in sometimes less than 5 or 10 minutes.
Wow.
By sucking on them and letting them burst open in their mouth. And something about the chlorophyll fat getting into their mucosa deactivates this pain syndrome. And the other one is apple cider vinegar.
What's the pain feel like? How do you know what alkaline pain is?
It's almost always aggravated when you're sleeping or at rest.
And so, but is
It's
that
usually sharp.
pain, and is it in your gut?
Sharp, intense. Well, it could be anywhere. Arthritic pains are sometimes referred pain from the gut via those enteric nerves out to the, like this spot is a correlation to the brain, and this one has this knee, and this one has
What
over
about
here. And
really intense cramps?
now
Like in your
that's
body,
another long discussion, because cramps can have up to 15 reasons why.
like low potassium, sodium, low.
Yeah, you start with the
Hydration.
minerals. You start with the minerals and hydration, then you work your way up. Like I have a checklist I just throw down with people.
I will tell you the solution when he's done and no longer, because he screws up if we talk. for more
Taping
minutes.
him
Yeah.
And breathing out.
So the simple for this time of year is, yeah, keep your breathing going, because we're heading into this late summer, which is the circle is the element, is the sort of the glyph of summer.
Not much of a circle.
Oh, there's a circle. See, there's a circle. Circle. And so the emotion of the circle is empathy. You're able to connect with others because your circle is complete. What do we have in the modern world? We have like partial circles. And oh, baby, you complete me. You know, these pop songs. Oh, baby, I can't live without you. You complete me. I'd never be anything without you and your love. Gross. I used to buy into it, you know. So we're looking at with a complete circle interface with a complete circle, then you get a bigger circle. But we have mostly in the world is, hey, I'll make a contract with you and I'll do this thing to diminish your circle, to dumb you down so I can be more comfortable with you. And then you can dumb me down so you'll be more comfortable with me. And it's generally what.
Taking each other down.
Right. And what's the Hendricks model? 5 compliments or appreciations for every criticism in a relationship.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
right.
that's right.
That's the Hendricks model. And I think that's awesome.
Many steps beyond, hey, can I give you some feedback? When you say, can I give you some feedback? Kind of nice to say, you were brilliant, you were loving. I know your heart can take this if we say this to connect it.
Yeah.
And
Right. Yeah, good social skill to have.
Yeah. So, you know, the Hendricks are good with that. So we're looking at how, because when empathy fails, we go into a little bit of judgment, and then we judge, and then we have anxiety or worry because we need to separate ourselves. And so the digestive system is a big part of anxiety. It's like chicken or the egg. Is my anxiety caused by my digestive dysfunction, or is my digestive dysfunction caused by my horrible thoughts? It goes both ways, unfortunately.
Horrible thoughts can create a whole reality.
And the way out is to breathe and to ask for grace and awareness, because we don't get to decide when we're in our body or not, for the most part. That's the force of life coming in and through us. And we can pray for it and beg for it and put a menu on. I call it putting a cook on the cook wheel of God. I put my request up on the cook wheel of God, and then what gets back to me may not be in my exact order, but it'll be something close. That's good for me. The cook wheel of God. I used to be a waiter for a long time. You put your order up, and then the order comes. Order up. And so the simple at this time of year then is you're eating more cooked food generally. Don't listen to the acupuncturists because they're brainwashed in the old Chinese medical system. Tierra even told us that 30 years ago when I started studying with them. We have to question all these old traditions and make them work in the modern world.
Oh, wow.
There's Ayurvedic dogma. The Vedic dogma is just ridiculous. I want to like some of these Vedic doctors. They're taking 2,000 year ago advice and trying to make it work in the modern world. That's
When there wasn't all that pollution and all the everything, fast paced and everything.
Right.
everything at once.
being a vegan for most people is a death sentence in this climate.
I know, I was.
'Cause I've seen it.
close- I got so sick being a vegan.
I was a vegan for
until-
2 years,
when I-
almost,
in
I mean, almost
1990,
croaked, you know.
91, Yeah. with you for-
So we're, Monica, a little lower. So I want to finish this. So more protein and fat, a little more cooked food, but have enough raw so you don't feel tired after you eat. Remember, that's the other foundation. One thing is if you're choosing correctly, you're thinking, I want to have more energy an hour later when I'm done eating. If you don't have more energy an hour after you're eating, the meal didn't work. There's no dogma in my system.
That was last night.
You check in and you go, okay, I have the sigh and the slouch. You know, and you're overeating. And I waited tables for 15, 20 years. You'd see it all the time. Oh, there's the sigh and the slouch. They overeat. You know, so when the breath is interrupted, that's when we've overeaten. You know, that whole recommendation, eat to 2/3 full. Oh my God, for 10 or 15 years, I'm like, what does that mean? 2/3 full, like till the belly's full? Or, and I realized if you can't breathe normally and take a deep breath when you're done eating, hey.
Hey, Katie.
I'm sorry.
Bernie gave me hers for the week. So if you can't take a deep breath when you're done eating, then it generally means that you've overeaten. And anybody heard of Mark David? He's a nutritional psychologist.
No.
I mentioned him here and there. His recommendation when you're done eating is get up from the table when you're full of energy. Might only be 5 bites. And then save the rest for later. Because it would be, I mean, it's like, because our mind says, oh, it's so delicious, 10 more bites, and then the energy's down. So overeating cancels out all energy. When you overeat, you're never gonna have more energy if you're done eating.
That's why dinner and dancing is good.
Well, my family was a walk. My grandma and my mom, everybody would go for a walk after dinner for a couple, you know, mile-long walk around them, you know, for half hour. And then, you know, that's the lymphatic pump. You know, your foot's going, and you're pumping the lymph a little bit. Sound effects not included. I did a little, well, I didn't show the people that are watching this video, there will be a picture in the description, a link to it, and you can look at these pictures that I'm referring to here. Did you know, another mystery of the universe, did you know that zinc has an affinity to progesterone and copper to estrogen? That's the freaky stuff I learned in my life. So that's from hair mineral analysis from Dr. Paul Eck in his work with hair mineral analysis since the 70s and the 80s, looking at these mineral ratios that come out of the hair. And it's like they always saw this correlation of high progesterone with high zinc and high estrogen with copper. So in a way, then, if you want to encourage, let's see, and then testosterone was with copper also, that's right. So testosterone, estrogen, copper, and progesterone, and what's the male counter equivalent to testosterone? I guess males have progesterone too, that's right. It just does different stuff. But testosterone and estrogen are more yang or more yin than progesterone. Right? Because estrogen encourages uterine growth. Estrogen's yang and warming. Progesterone is pretty chill hormone. And testosterone really gets you going because that's what you ladies get during ovulation. There's a big surge of testosterone right around day 14.
Randy.
You get all jacked up. You get the full moon and you're all full of testosterone. Where's that anandamide? And then the men, you know, that's what happened that's how I broke my neck, was probably testosterone excess, you know, too much of that baloney going on. Yeah, up in Davenport. 35 years ago. Should have died.
Wow, I want to hear that story sometime.
That's why I'm sitting here, is because of that.
That's why he's teaching.
That's why I'm teaching.
Without-
Don't be like me.
I'll try to not-
And the antithesis model. Don't do that when you're 21. That's why the young men, when they're about 19, I like to get a hold of them like, hey, I know what you're going through. So you might want to talk to me for a little bit here and come to men's group. I think Liam's coming. Okay, I'm going to finish this now. So the color we're heading into now, the colors of the earth element are earth tones, browns and yellows and tans. Then we're heading into the color of the lung and the metal element. The lung and the large intestine is white and very light colors. So in celebration of that, I'm wearing my brown earth tone pants and my white shirt. That's the energetically correct thing to wear.
It's so funny that large intestine is white and brown.
Well, yeah. There ain't no virgins in that rectum,
Yeah.
Lots of stuff passes through there. Although I did jokingly say to Jean the other night that I had a date with my rectum, so I did an enema. And
You said that many times.
That's right.
That's one of your favorite jokes.
I love it. Got a very intimate relationship with my rectum.
Kind of another kind of bakery.
Yeah. That you talk about online to the world.
Yeah. We'll probably edit that part out, actually.
I doubt it.
Confessions of Craig Lang.
Yeah.
So I think I want to mention the mineral elements are important because we're getting all this acid. So refined sugar is different than pure cane sugar. What's the difference?
Not whole.
The minerals, I think.
It's only
On that chart, which mineral specifically is taken out?
Oh,
It's one of the main macro elements, alkaline macro elements.
Calcium.
Potassium.
Potassium.
Potassium is always associated with high glucose foods. It helps the body metabolize the glucose. So the pure sugar cane has all this chromium and potassium and these alkaline elements to offset the acid of the sugar. And then mankind goes, we need white, we need refined consciousness, refined white people. Look at the British. They're about as white, pasty white as they come, right? But the first white sugar was only used in apothecaries back in the 1600s. It was considered a poison.
Wow.
And then in 1905, Harvey Wiley, the last true head of the FDA, there's a repeat story. I keep saying it because I want you guys to get it. He had the Pure Food and Drug Act passed in 1906. Now, everything that had white flour and white sugar is supposed to have a warning on it that said this causes cancer.
But
1905. And then Harvey Wiley was fired in 1910 and taken out of office. And then in smeared, just like they're doing now. And then 22, he wrote a book called Crimes Against My Food Law, Crimes Against the Food Law. And that book was burned, taken out of libraries, harassed again. That was the last true head of the FDA for We the People.
Wow.
Everyone since then has been in the Monsanto train of,
Yeah, you used to have
We're
a
gonna
different,
get at it.
you used to have a different name to it too.
I believe the Food and Drug Administration started something around there, but it might have been a different name, right? And the USDA was a separate entity. United States Department of Agriculture, thank you.
Yeah.
And the FDA is Food and Drug Administration. Then you have the American Medical Association was getting started then. And all these these three-letter agencies, right?
Yeah.
But that's when they started the tricks, that was about 110 years ago. And so you have to look like, it's only because of Royal Lee and Standard Process that I looked. Because he came into my life 12, 13 years ago, and I was like, where have they been? This is like, wow, why wasn't I looking at this before? Family-owned companies since 1930? What? 1,000-acre farm, permaculture? What? Yeah, so if you're gonna have something white, like I had, I'm gonna pick on myself, I had some Beckman's Asiago cheese white bread sourdough. It's all Bernie's fault. She's been doing this Watsonville sourdough, and so I buy a loaf and have a slice with my lasagna. I made this egg quiche, and
no personal responsibility.
so
Right.
so it's taking the trace minerals rich with the white. That's the strategy. So making sure I'm getting enough greens and other things with the white. That's taking responsibility. Is I'm going to take this poison over here and I'm going to take some alkaline stuff with it, make sure I don't go into the acid toilet. And And it could be a refined fat, same way. Refined fats are just carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. And the danger of refined fats is that the enzyme complex associated with them is gone. And that's why I'm always telling people, don't buy any cod liver oil out there. It's already hard to digest. And then I'm going to pick on them because I dislike them a lot. And that's the place out in Watsonville, Nordic Naturals, and their molecularly distilled fish oils. They're worthless. They're so highly refined, your body can't even process them. Yuck.
Standard process is good. Right?
Standard process uses enzymes to process their cod liver oil raw. So the lipase fat enzyme is still associated with the fat, so your body effortlessly digests it because the enzyme's already there. And nothing works without enzymes. Remember Edward Howell's work? They were doing this in the 50s. They were studying raw foods and cooked food diets and how high the white blood cell count was an hour after eating. And they saw the syndrome is the more cooked food, the more wheat, the more refined foods, the higher was the white blood cell count 2 hours, an hour after eating. And if you ate at least 51% raw, there was a flat line. There was no white blood cell count increase. That's because of the enzyme load being taken on the pancreas, because you have two types of enzymes in your body. There's digestive enzymes, and then there's metabolic enzymes. And the pancreas makes both. So if you eat all cooked food, then your metabolic enzymes your body needs to fight cancer and do cleanup between meals isn't available. And then you see the state of the world now. All this cooked food, no metabolic enzymes. We wonder why they're getting cancer. We'll all get cancer at least 5 times a day, every day of our life. And our body just deals with it. But not those people in anaerobic metabolism that Carl was talking about a few weeks ago, remember? That's how you know you're in trouble, is if your energy is just tanked. And no matter what you do, it won't go up. That means you're in anaerobic metabolism. And that's why that machine over there, because that'll jump you out of it. It'll give you a jump start. It's like a jump start on your battery. Because that's what people are saying. So you want to get back into aerobic metabolism. And I just found out the other day, blew my mind, that, we see this view of anatomy, like the cell anatomy, and there's one mitochondria with the cell. You see on these little diagrams, these little squiggly mitochondria. Well, Morley Robbins of the Root Cause Protocol, I just watched his webinar on cell metabolism and mitochondria. Heart cells have 500 mitochondria. Brain cells have 1,000 mitochondria. Gee, and that's the energy of the cell. So we're like, you see how they twisted the science over here and over here and over here, these distortions, and then suddenly we're in this world devoid of any magic whatsoever because we've been lied to so much, we just accept it. So what I'm talking about here is the spark of life. You want to have the protein type needs the lean and the fat for energy, and the carb type needs carbs for energy. And most people are somewhere in between, called the mixed type, which is, I wish I was there, but I'm way over on the protein type side. So when I have more than 100 grams of carbs, I go into low energy because that's not my fuel mix. And then the rest of you, thank God, you get to have carbs. I have a friend, if he doesn't have carbs for breakfast, his whole day is ruined. And if I have carbs for breakfast, my whole day is ruined. We're polar opposites. If I have carbs like oatmeal for breakfast, oh, my day's ruined. I didn't find that out till I was older. My best friend, though, if he doesn't have sourdough bread that he makes himself or oatmeal, his whole day is ruined. And you scratch your head and you go, so anybody that tells you the universal diet is this, you run. Because every one of us is different. And that's what makes health alchemy and nutrition with me a lot different, because our job is to determine, is your chooser broken first and foremost? Are you choosing from trauma and trigger and armoring and avoidance, or are you choosing from a healthy place? And how do we know that? Well, we learn that. And then what's your fuel mix? How much carbohydrate do you need per day? And that's where the Chronometer app comes in. Standard process supplements are on Chronometer. I was like, what? Type in Cataplex B, and I was like, you're not getting enough thiamine B1 in your diet. Let's see it. Let's put in Cataplex B in there. Oh, look at it, it's popping right up. So this client got to see right away on the little table, your thiamine was only 50% of what it should be. Let's put in 6 Cataplex Bs. Oh, look now, it's above 100%. Happy as a clam. Although I don't know if clams are happy anymore.
Yeah.
Are they?
That's
And finally, to end it, so in the wintertime, there's these heating elements. And what is phosphorus associated with the P? It's acidic. What types of foods is phosphorus associated with?
Green leafy vegetables.
Nope. Here's some clues. Phosphorus is what makes the firefly glow. Phosphorus is what makes the ocean glow, phosphorescence. Phosphorus is in all light bulbs. It's called the light bearer element. So there's your hint. It's also very acidic, phosphoric acid. Hint, hint.
Main ingredient, Coca-Cola.
That's right. They're dissolving your bones with it. That's right. It dissolves your bones.
Also dissolves better, yes.
So phosphorus is associated with most of your acid forming foods, specifically though, meat and dairy and grains. So what Royal Lee used to talk about was you want to eat your grains raw. So he would have people eating raw wheat berries like muesli, because when you soak wheat berries, it makes this it's called phosphagen. And it's a phosphorus enzyme that helps your body metabolize phosphorus more skillfully, because calcium is associated with phosphorus also.
What is better cooked? Everything should be raw.
Carbohydrates are better cooked generally. Your starchy foods are usually better cooked, except for potatoes, apparently. If you eat it, raw potatoes are very high in vitamin C.
I can tell you how to eat them too. Like,
You eat lots of potatoes lately, but they're not raw.
Yeah,
Raw potatoes are gross.
no,
yeah, they're
way
not that
better.
yummy, but Monica's discovered we've got some pickling techniques that make them pretty decent.
I'm easier to pick one too.
Using pickling, good. So phosphorus, you want these elements with their associated enzymes. And so phosphorus is a food you want more in the winter because it's warming. And
Fireflies are warm.
one of the mysteries to metabolism over here is, see how I have iron, copper, and magnesium next to each other? All three of those elements have to do with oxygen metabolism. And magnesium is involved in every single ATP reaction of energy in your body, every single one. So that's what I've been really keying in on, the magnesium burn rate on the cell level. And that's why we need a lot more magnesium than we thought. And that's why you get the cramps, is generally you probably need 5 times more magnesium than you're taking. And you can't get enough from food. I'm a nutritionist and I have not seen it happen in anybody.
What about calm? The calm.
It's crap.
I knew
It's
you were gonna
shit.
say that.
The
right.
citrate form is crap. It upsets your copper red blood cell metabolism. That's per Morley Robbins, the root cause protocol. He says most magnesiums you can get away with doing, but not the citrate form. Calm is part of the conspiracy, unfortunately. So is D3, so is ascorbic acid, so is
D3,
zinc and
with
excess.
D3?
Don't take D3. I'll say it in front of 1,000 doctors. It's horse shit to take it. It takes your body 2 to 3 years to get rid of it. It's an over-the-counter hormone being prescribed as a supplement when it's actually a hormone. You get sunlight and cod liver oil for your D. You get 27 forms from that. You get one form, which is the storage form from D3. I would never take it. I've never taken it. I never will.
And you can send your yoni.
Sun your yoni. That's right.
I love telling
If you have a
Emma's
yoni.
not here to say it.
Yeah, right.
You'll be blown away how fast your body warms up when you sun your yoni. Like all the
Energy
thin air,
charge.
the thin,
Membranes?
when you put sun where the sun doesn't usually shine, then your body sucks it in.
There you go.
Ooh, I
Great
like that.
vitamin D source.
I got to tell Gene's story too. So Gene sent me a story about male sperm, unvaccinated sperm. I guess in the sperm banks is worth like 20,000 more percent or something like that.
Well, yes, soaring up.
It's
Oh,
soaring
wow.
up.
Yeah.
And so
Unvaccinated
sperm?
unvaccinated male sperm.
Wow.
And so the picture, the meme she sent me is this ape and he's kind of holding his balls. Was he holding his
Well, he's
balls?
got his legs spread and you just get a great view of his balls. He's just lazing around.
He's just chilling.
Waiting
It's
for
just
the price to go up even more. That's great.
He's just waiting for the investment to go up, right? Just cold chilling with the sun on his balls. Well, the sun usually doesn't shine, right?
Oh,
That's
Vitamin D and rich.
Yeah.
wow.
Isn't that good?
Never thought that
Yeah.
one.
That's really
It
fun.
made me think, maybe I should go donate,
Valuable resource.
But then I was telling Gene, do you really want mystery Craigs running around out there,
We're all a mystery.
I think one Craig is probably enough for the world. So then you want to have more white and earth tone colored foods because it'll get you, why? Because it'll get you more aligned with the climate you're in. We just had golden berries, right? That's a nice color, golden
Gorgeous.
colored berry. It's round, right? So you get the gold and the round.
Apples.
Apples, onions.
Onions,
Onions are round. Rutabagas are kind of earth tone and they're round.
radishes, of course.
Radishes, what else? Yeah, white radish.
Cabbage.
Cabbages, very good. So they would say eat the vegetables that grow at ground level this time of year.
Ah.
So your onions, your
Just below the ground
squashes.
is as good as right on top. Yeah,
So you wouldn't
no.
have a long root, you would have a round root. So a radish is a round root, an onion's a round root, a rutabaga is
Oh,
more round.
surface
Like
area.
parsnip and carrots, more winter energy, and burdock. But those rounder roots, so tubers like potatoes are a little more round. Because potatoes don't grow down, they grow sideways like sausages, you know, on the surface. Too bad they weren't sausages, but.
Sausages could grow on plants.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Well, there was that, remember there was JP that did the whole tofu. There was, if you were trying to make tofu taste like meat one, oh my God, that was one of the most funny things he ever put together.
Oh, there's that.
He was pretending like it was like meat that tastes like tofu. He was doing the opposite.
Oh, ah.
So, I mean, he was like, oh, it was one of the best ones. It was like a couple of years ago. So that's where this time of year, what I see the most trouble is like the vegan that can't adapt to the winter time because they're not getting enough fat and protein in their diet generally. And after studying the protein on the Wednesday call last week, you sort of get a little taste of how important protein is, right? I mean, even your HDL and LDL, they're lipoproteins made of protein. Your neurotransmitters, serotonin and dopamine, they're all made of protein. Your skin and your bones are made of protein. Your gut lining is made of protein. And so we have a very real protein deficiency and maldigested, damaged protein problem. We don't even talk about it much. But after studying the lab work, it's like, I mean, proteins even buffer acids to some degree. Amino acids buffer acids. And so we have this priority of what was demonized in the last 100 years? Protein and fat, wasn't it? And cholesterol, and they're all the three essentials. There's no such thing as an essential carbohydrate. No such thing. And we've been brainwashed to the low fat diet, low protein diet, high carb diet, and then you see where America is.
Bad.
Very bad.
Very bad.
Very bad brainwashing propaganda.
But did it really start 100 years ago? It didn't really take until 50 years ago.
Well, they had to work on a few generations of people, right? Because that's when the bread was freshly milled 100 years ago. And they went into the central milling and started giving us stale flour, which caused the elevated cholesterol, was from the stale rancid wheat germ flour oil.
What kind of mushroom are these? Great?
It was one of those organic little variety chef packs at New Leaf, or a bunch of different ones. It was really
There's
cute.
a psychedelic kind that looks like that
I
too.
think I missed. it.
Yeah. So I was going to finish this with your ratio then is if you have your acid forming, you know, your carbohydrates, your fats, and your protein. In the summertime, that goes down and your veggie fruit goes up. And then slowly we're working with back this way, back to more of your acid forming rich foods and less of your veggies. And if you're like me, you'll see you won't feel well eating too much raw food in the winter. But then you also won't feel well eating too much cooked food. So it's quite a dance to keep, like I feel the healthiest around April, May, when the raw food really comes in through about November. And then November through February when it's cold, it's like I have to eat cooked food, but I always feel sluggish and weighed down from the cooked food. So I think the point I'm going to try this year is more raw meat, raw butter, raw, the heavy foods, and see if that helps. Would be the goal. And with friends like Cindy bringing raw liver over, you know, we're going to succeed.
Yeah, guys.
I want to try an orange juice marinated thin sliced liver next. Like orange juice teriyaki or something.
So much work. Just take it straight.
Yeah.
It wasn't bad actually. I was told the chicken liver was the easiest. I think you told me on the.
Oh, I don't know.
I think you told me, and then because cow liver is just so big and gnarly.
I've never tried cow liver.
Ah,
What did we? what
I've
was
had
it
it cooked, but not
that
raw.
we just ate?
That was
It
chicken
was
liver.
chicken.
it was very mild.
Yeah.
You went
Yeah.
raw?
So you can eat raw chicken liver, but you're not supposed to eat raw chicken, right?
No, you can eat.
You
raw-
I
can
don't
eat raw
think
chicken.
we
I've
eat
eaten raw chicken.
Yeah, no, we've been told all
I got it
kinds of
super
lies.
fresh.
It's lies. It's pure lies, Katie.
I mean,
There's
if
so
you
much
know
lye.
it's fresh and good, I guess. Then
Well, you're not gonna have Foster Farm stale,
Yeah, you're not gonna-
raw
yeah.
chicken. No.
Yeah.
Because chickens sweat through their skin. So the Foster Farms chicken, it's gonna have a lot of crap in the skin, isn't it? You know. Mysteries of the universe. So does anybody have a story like Monica we were talking about last week, just to end this on, and I'm going to turn the recorder off in a second. So I'll be talking more about this because the cleanse is coming up, and it's a great way to, like we said, cleanse out the summer, what they call the yin excess in macrobiotics. And then your spring cleanse are cleaning out the yang excess while you're accumulated sodium in the winter, now you're accumulated potassium poisons, they call it. They have very unflattering ways of putting things. That's why I don't consider myself a macrobiotic. And then play with your calcium magnesium ratio. I got a client right now and he's trying to use Conjuplex and get ionized calcium in for a viral problem. And but if he doesn't, so he needs to get magnesium. Every time he gets calcium, he has to take magnesium with it. Otherwise his bowels constipate because calcium causes constipation and magnesium causes laxative. That's the dance. That's why there's a ratio for, it used to be most of us needed 5 parts calcium to 1 part magnesium. And now it's more like 1 to 1. Yeah, it's more like 1 to 1.
We need magnesium to absorb calcium.
We do, but what's happened is we used to have a 7 to 1 potassium to sodium ratio, and now it's more like 5 to 1. We used to have this ratio of the need for magnesium was much less than it is now. And I believe it's because the food supply has been degenerated that much. The magnesium in the soil. We don't eat enough chlorophyll-rich foods. Remember, those of you on the call here watching the video, I'm going to put up a screenshot here real quick. And there's a slide here that I've shown you guys before, a chlorophyll slide, how chlorophyll and hemoglobin are identical. So plant blood and human blood is basically identical, except for magnesium's at the center of chlorophyll and iron's at the center of hemoglobin. And so the best way to get magnesium is to eat green leafy foods, turns out, because the chlorophyll magnesium gets transmuted right into your red blood cell.
What about like chlorella and
I don't know that those
what's the other one?
the spirulina, chlorella,
Thank you.
and blue-green algae, but those algae, some of them do make chlorophyll and some of them don't. Like the brown algae don't make chlorophyll and the red algae don't either,
But the
but the green algae do. So you want to make sure it's green. Like a kiwi is going to have chlorophyll in it. Right? Kiwis are yummy chlorophyll source. So that's why we were talking about in the group on Wednesday in the lab, where you can measure your red blood cell magnesium. You can also measure your serum magnesium. So if this is a red blood cell, you can measure the magnesium inside that cell, or if this is the plasma that the red blood cell is floating around in, you can measure the magnesium in the plasma that the cell's floating in. And they're both totally different measures.
And different kinds of magnesium.
Potentially, yeah. I believe, my theory is that the magnesium at the center of the chlorophyll molecule goes into the human hemoglobin as red blood cell magnesium. Like it doesn't even change. And the iron just gets added in.
Say that again, sorry.
So you talk about your red blood cell magnesium, right? So how is the body getting magnesium into the red blood cell? What if your red blood cells are being made up purely from chlorophyll and iron is just being shoveled in? Versus having to tear apart the chlorophyll molecule and make a hemoglobin molecule out of it. You figure the body is good at recycling, right? Nature's good at recycling. It would recycle the chlorophyll right into hemoglobin and just switch out the magnesium to put it in the mitochondria and then have the center of the molecule be iron. Because remember, the magnesium has to go to the mitochondria to fuel the energy reactions. Morley, if you study the root cause protocol, he's really going to have a lot more about this. And so in the next few weeks, we'll go over this a little more about the transition, the skill of moving into the winter very skillfully and consciously even giving yourself a cold. I'm going to end on that, is how do you consciously give yourself a cold or a fever?
I don't know.